Princess Ilara sat on her throne, looking out at the endless rows of suitors who had gathered in the grand hall. The Seraphs, her people, were known for their beauty, strength, and unmatched intellect. For generations, they had been the dominant race in the galaxy, and their customs reflected this power. Among these traditions was the sacred contest for the hand of the princess. Every eligible suitor was expected to prove their worthiness in a series of challenges. Only the strongest, smartest, and most skilled would have a chance to win the honor of marrying a Seraph princess. Ilara had grown up with this expectation. She knew her future would be shaped by the result of this contest. The pressure weighed heavily on her heart, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. She had watched countless suitors come and go, each one more impressive than the last, yet none of them had ever captured her heart. They came with their displays of wealth, their impressive battles, and their promises of power, but none of them had ever truly seen her for who she was beyond her title. Her people, the Seraphs, prided themselves on their power, intelligence, and control. The Seraphs were a species that valued strength and intellect above all. They believed that love was not about feelings but about duty and dominance. For Ilara, this was the norm, but it was also something that left her feeling empty. The suitors who came from across the galaxy were all well versed in the traditions of the Seraphs, but there was one suitor who stood out from the rest, a human, an outsider. His name was Jack. When Ilara first heard of him, she laughed at the idea, a human in the contest. The Seraphs had long considered humans to be a primitive species. They were known for their lack of advanced technology and their reliance on basic emotions. In the eyes of the Seraphs, humans were beneath them. How could a human, with his frailty and short lifespan, possibly stand a chance in the contest? But Jack was not like the other suitors. He had no grand title or wealth. He had no army at his back, no fleet of ships, and no powerful allies. He came alone, with only his resolve to see him through the challenges ahead. Ilara had heard rumors about this strange man, rumors that he was different from the rest. He had no interest in power, no need for riches. His only goal was to prove himself. At first, Ilara didn't take him seriously. She watched as he entered the first challenge, a combat trial against one of the strongest of her suitors, a Seraph warrior named Riker. Riker was a towering figure, known for his speed and unmatched skill with a blade. He had defeated every opponent he had faced without breaking a sweat. He was confident, arrogant, and certain that this would be no different. Jack, on the other hand, had no formal training in combat. His hands were calloused from years of hard work, but he had never held a weapon like the ones the Seraphs wielded. The idea of fighting with such an advanced blade seemed absurd to him, but Jack wasn't the type to back down from a challenge. He stepped into the arena, his heart pounding but his mind clear. He had nothing to prove except to himself. The duel began, and Riker attacked first. His strikes were fast and precise, but Jack dodged each one with a speed and agility that surprised even Ilara. He didn't fight with the same grace as the Seraphs, but there was a rawness to his movements, a desperate energy that made up for his lack of technique. He fought with everything he had, and to Ilara's surprise, Riker was struggling. The human wasn't winning, but he was far from losing. In the final moments of the duel, Jack saw an opening. Riker, exhausted from his relentless attacks, left himself vulnerable for just a second. Jack seized the moment, using his quick reflexes to land a blow that disarmed Riker. The crowd gasped in disbelief. Jack had won. Riker, the mightiest of the Seraph warriors, lay on the ground, defeated by a human with no special training or power. The suitors were stunned, and Ilara felt a strange sense of curiosity stir within her. Could this human really be as impressive as the rumors said? The next challenge was one of intellect, a test of strategy and logic, designed to push even the brightest minds to their limits. Ilara watched as suitor after suitor failed to crack the complex series of puzzles and riddles. This was the Seraph way, a contest of wit, where intelligence was the key to success. The Seraphs believed that only the cleverest could rule their people. Jack stepped up to face the challenge with no idea what he was getting into. He had never encountered such complex riddles, but he had a mind that was quick and adaptable. As the challenge unfolded, Jack's natural problem-solving skills came to the forefront. Where others stumbled over the most trivial details, Jack saw the patterns and connections that others missed. He didn't solve the puzzle in the expected way, but he solved it nonetheless. The crowd, still skeptical of the human's abilities, was once again taken aback. Jack's approach was unconventional, but it worked. He had outsmarted the brightest minds of the Seraphs and proven that intellect wasn't about following the rules. It was about thinking outside the box. Alara couldn't believe what she was seeing. She had never imagined that a human would be capable of such feats. She had always believed that her people were the epitome of intelligence and power, but Jack was proving that there was more to strength than simply physical prowess or raw intellect. There was something deeper in him, something that no one had expected. The final challenge was one of diplomacy, a test of how well each suitor could navigate the intricate politics of the Seraph court. It was a game of influence, of words and alliances. It was the most difficult challenge of all, and many suitors had failed to even get close to understanding the delicate balance of power that existed within the Seraphs. Jack, with no knowledge of the Seraph court or its customs, stepped into the challenge with the same quiet confidence he had shown before. What he lacked in experience, Jack made up for in sincerity. He didn't try to manipulate or deceive. He simply spoke from the heart, offering solutions that were simple, direct, and most importantly, honest. The Seraphs were used to the politics of manipulation and power, but Jack showed them something different. He showed them that trust and integrity could be just as powerful as any political maneuver. When the challenge ended, Jack had once again succeeded. He had navigated the most complex of Seraph traditions with nothing but his own conviction. As Alara watched him from her throne, she couldn't deny the growing admiration she felt for the human who had come to her world with nothing but a desire to prove himself. Jack wasn't like the other suitors. He didn't seek power or status. He didn't want to rule over the Seraphs. He simply wanted to show that a human could stand shoulder to shoulder with them, not as a servant or a slave, but as an equal. By the end of the contest, Jack had done what no one had thought possible. He had defeated the best and brightest of the Seraphs and had earned the right to stand before Alara as a suitor. The princess, who had once dismissed him as nothing more than a curiosity, now found herself drawn to him in a way she couldn't explain. Jack had earned her respect, and she was beginning to wonder if he could offer something that none of her people ever had. Alara knew that the road ahead would not be easy. Her people would never accept a human as their equal. But Jack had done what no Seraph could have imagined. He had proven that strength wasn't just about power or intellect. It was about heart, resilience, and the willingness to fight for what mattered. As the suitors left the hall, Alara couldn't help but feel a stirring within her. The contest had ended, but her journey with Jack was only just beginning. Alara stood by the window, gazing out at the vast landscape beyond the palace. Her mind was still reeling from the events of the last few days. The contest had been unlike anything she had ever imagined. The suitors, each more powerful and influential than the last, had all fallen short of Jack, the human who had come to their world with nothing but his will to succeed. She had watched him fight, think, and negotiate with a grace and determination that was foreign to her people. It was as if he were not just surviving in their world but thriving, and it had stirred something deep within her, a feeling she couldn't ignore, a feeling she had never experienced before. Alara had been raised to believe in the superiority of the Seraphs. Her people were the best, the brightest, and the strongest. They had built their empire on intelligence, strength, and strategy. But Jack had shown her that there was more to power than what her people had taught her. There was something in his humanity that called to her, something pure and unpretentious. His courage, his willingness to fight not just for victory, but for honor and for those he cared about, was something the Seraphs had long lost sight of. And now, Alara couldn't help but wonder if there was a place for someone like Jack in her world. Her thoughts were interrupted when Jack entered the room. He moved with the same quiet confidence that had marked his every action since he had arrived in their world. Despite the grandeur of the palace, despite the wealth and power of the Seraphs, Jack remained humble. He didn't seek attention, didn't demand respect. He earned it through his actions. Alara, Jack's voice was soft but steady, pulling her from her reverie. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to check on you. The last few days must have been overwhelming. Alara turned to face him, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. It has been. But it's not just the contest that's been overwhelming. It's everything that's come after. Jack stepped closer, his expression thoughtful. You're not sure what to do next, are you? She shook her head slowly. No, I'm not. My people, they have always believed in one thing: superiority, power. We've always been told that we are the best, that our strength and intelligence make us untouchable. But I've seen something in you, Jack, something that none of my suitors ever showed me. And it scares me. Jack didn't respond immediately. He simply stood there, waiting for her to continue. I've spent my entire life being told that I have to choose someone who can stand beside me in power, Alara continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Someone who can be my equal in every way. But what if that's not what I need? What if I need something else, something I can't even describe? Jack's eyes softened. He took a step forward, his hand outstretched. You don't have to be afraid, Alara. You don't have to choose what others want for you. You can choose what's best for you. The words were simple, but they resonated with her in a way that no grand speech ever had. For the first time in her life, Alara realized that she didn't have to live up to anyone's expectations but her own. And the person who had shown her this wasn't a seraph, wasn't a powerful ruler or a brilliant diplomat. It was Jack, a human who had come from a world so different from hers that she could hardly comprehend it. But it was that difference that had drawn her to him. It was the way he saw the world, his unyielding belief in what was right, his refusal to compromise his integrity, and his ability to fight for what he believed in. It was something her people had lost long ago in their pursuit of dominance. I don't want to disappoint you, Alara said softly, her eyes meeting Jack's. I don't want to disappoint my people, but I also don't want to live a life that isn't mine. I want to choose my own path, and I want you to be a part of it. Jack's face softened, and he reached out to take her hand in his. You don't have to do this alone, Alara. I'll be here for you every step of the way. We don't have to follow anyone's path but our own. The sincerity in his voice brought a warmth to her heart that she had never felt before, and in that moment, she knew that she was not alone. Jack had already proven that he would stand by her, no matter the cost. He had already fought for her, for their future in ways that none of the other suitors had. And now, it was her turn to choose, her turn to fight for what she wanted. But the road ahead would not be easy. The Seraphs would never accept Jack as her equal, no matter how many challenges he had won. They would see him as an outsider, as something beneath them. And there would be those who would fight to keep the old ways alive, to uphold the traditions that had kept them in power for so long. Alara knew that her decision would shake the foundations of her world. It would challenge everything her people had believed in. And it would make her enemies of those who had once been her allies. But as she looked into Jack's eyes, she knew that it was a fight worth having. The following days were a whirlwind of preparations. News of Jack's victory spread throughout the palace, and while many were still in disbelief that a human had bested their best, others began to take notice. They began to wonder if perhaps the Seraphs had grown too complacent, too reliant on their strength and intellect, and had lost sight of what truly mattered. Jack and Alara spent long hours together, discussing their plans. They knew that the traditional way of life for the Seraphs was not going to change overnight, but they also knew that change was inevitable, and if they were going to face the opposition that would surely come, they had to be ready. But as Alara's mind turned to the future, a sense of dread began to creep in. She had been raised to be a leader, to make decisions for the good of her people. But now, she was faced with a decision that could tear her world apart. The Seraphs would not easily accept her choice, and there would be those who would do anything to stop it. Alara had heard whispers among the council members, murmurs of unrest. There were those who believed that the human had no place in their world. They would stop at nothing to ensure that he was removed, even if it meant going to war. Jack could sense the tension building, but he remained calm. "We've faced challenges before," he said, "but this time we're not fighting alone." And as Alara looked at him, she realized that he was right. They had each other, and together they could face whatever came their way. But Alara knew that the coming days would be difficult. Her people were not going to change easily, and those who opposed her would not go down without a fight. It was clear that the battle ahead would be more than just a contest of strength or intellect. It would be a battle for the future of her people, and for her heart. The sun was setting as Alara stood on the balcony overlooking the vast city below. The palace, with its gleaming towers and impressive spires, seemed like a distant dream now. The world she had once known was changing, and she wasn't sure what the future would hold. But she knew one thing for certain: she had to be true to herself. Turning to face Jack, who had joined her on the balcony, she took a deep breath. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady. Jack smiled, taking her hand in his. "We'll face this together, no matter what happens." And with that, Alara knew that her journey was just beginning. The path ahead would be uncertain, but she was no longer afraid. For the first time in her life, she was ready to fight for what truly mattered: her freedom, her future, and the love she had found in Jack, the human who had defied all odds and shown her the way. The days following Alara's decision were filled with uncertainty. The palace, once a symbol of Seraph pride and power, now seemed like a cage. Alara had chosen her path, but she knew it wasn't going to be an easy road. Her people, those who had spent their lives believing in the superiority of the Seraphs, would not easily accept change. And Jack, the human who had fought for her heart, was a constant reminder of that change. Alara spent her nights walking the halls of the palace, her thoughts consumed by the future. Every time she looked out at the distant stars, she was reminded of the world beyond her own, a world where things were simpler, where humanity still clung to the values of hope, love, and survival. She had seen it in Jack's eyes. He fought not for glory or power, but for the chance to make a difference. And now he was her partner in this battle. But the question remained: could the Seraphs ever accept a human as their equal? Could they embrace a future where power was not defined by strength and intellect alone, but by something deeper, something more human? Jack, ever patient, remained by her side. He had come to her world not knowing what to expect, but now he was fully aware of the challenges ahead. He could see the fear in Alara's eyes, the doubt that clouded her usually confident demeanor. But Jack didn't need her to be perfect. He only needed her to be herself. He had already seen the strength in her, the fire that burned within her heart, and he knew that together they could face whatever came their way. One afternoon, Alara and Jack stood together in the palace gardens, looking out at the vast horizon. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the land. It was a peaceful moment, a brief escape from the turmoil that loomed ahead, but Alara knew that the calm wouldn't last. The Council of Seraphs would soon convene to discuss her decision, and they would not be kind to the idea of a human in their midst. "They won't accept it, will they?" Alara asked softly, her gaze fixed on the distant mountains. "I can already hear the whispers. I can already feel the anger brewing among them." Jack turned to her, his expression gentle. Not everyone will agree, but some will. There are always those who are willing to fight for change, even when it seems impossible. Alara sighed, her shoulders heavy with the weight of responsibility. I don't want to fight my people, Jack. I never wanted to go against them, but I can't ignore what's in my heart. I can't pretend that I don't feel what I feel for you. Jack reached out, taking her hand in his. You don't have to do this alone. We're in this together, and no matter what happens, I'll stand by you. Her heart swelled with warmth at his words, and for the first time in days, Alara allowed herself to smile. She had made her choice. And Jack was right. She didn't have to fight it alone. They were stronger together. The next day, the Council of Seraphs gathered in the Grand Hall, their voices rising in heated debate. Alara stood at the front of the room, her gaze unwavering as she faced the assembled leaders. They were angry, their eyes filled with suspicion and disbelief. Some were quiet, their faces stern, while others openly voiced their objections. Your Highness, one of the council members, a tall, silver-haired seraph named Darius, began, his voice cold and firm. You've allowed a human to enter our world, to challenge our traditions, and now you stand here, declaring that he is worthy of being by your side. Do you truly believe that a human, with all their weaknesses, can rule alongside us? They are inferior in every way. They have no place here. Alara's heart tightened at his words, but she refused to show any sign of weakness. She had already made her decision, and she would not back down. I believe that strength is not defined by the blood in one's veins, Darius. It is not defined by power or status. It is defined by courage, loyalty, and love. Jack has proven that he possesses those qualities, and that is why I have chosen him. The room fell silent, the council members exchanging uneasy glances. It was clear that they were not prepared for such a response. Alara could see the uncertainty in their eyes, the cracks beginning to show in their unwavering belief in the old ways. She had not expected them to change overnight, but she had hoped that they would at least consider her perspective. But Darius was quick to speak again, his voice rising in anger. You are throwing away everything that our people have fought for, Your Highness. You are abandoning our traditions for the sake of a human. This will not be tolerated. If you choose to stand with him, you will be standing against us. Alara felt her heart race, but she remained calm. I am not abandoning our traditions, Darius. I am redefining them. And I am asking you to open your minds to the possibility that there is more to strength than what we have been taught. The future of the Seraphs is not about domination and power. It is about unity and understanding. If we are to survive in this galaxy, we must learn to coexist with others, not conquer them. The tension in the room was palpable. Alara could feel the weight of their gaze upon her, each council member silently weighing her words. And then a voice spoke from the back of the room, a voice that Alara hadn't expected to hear. I agree with the princess, came the voice of Leora, a young seraph diplomat who had always been known for her open-mindedness. We cannot continue to live in isolation, believing ourselves to be superior to everyone else. There is strength in diversity, in understanding other cultures. If we are to evolve as a species, we must learn from those who are different from us. Alara's eyes widened in surprise, and for the first time since the council had begun, she felt a glimmer of hope. Leora had always been a voice of reason, but she had never spoken so boldly before. It was a sign, a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. Darius scowled, clearly frustrated by the unexpected support. You speak of unity and understanding, but what do you truly know of this human, Alara? What makes him worthy of standing beside you? Can he offer you the same strength, the same power that we, the Seraphs, have fought to preserve for centuries? Jack stepped forward, his voice steady and unwavering. I may not have the power that your people possess, but I have something just as important. I have the will to fight for what is right, and I will stand beside Alara, not as her servant or her subject, but as her equal. I may be human, but I believe that we are all capable of greatness, no matter where we come from." There was a pause, the room heavy with the weight of Jack's words. Alara could see the shift in the atmosphere. It was subtle, but it was there. The Seraphs had always been proud, and they were not used to being challenged. But Jack's honesty, his willingness to stand before them without fear, had made them pause. Perhaps they were beginning to see what Alara had seen all along, the strength of character that made Jack more than just a human. As the council session continued, the debate raged on, but Alara no longer felt the same fear that had gripped her before. She knew that this was just the beginning. There would be those who would fight to keep the old ways alive, those who would never accept Jack as one of them. But Alara was no longer afraid. She had made her choice, and she would stand by it, no matter the cost. Later that evening, after the council had adjourned, Alara and Jack stood together on the balcony overlooking the city. The stars twinkled above and the air was cool and crisp. "Do you think we've won?" Alara asked quietly, her gaze turned toward the horizon. Jack smiled, his hand resting gently on hers. "Not yet, but we've taken the first step, and that's more than anyone expected." Alara looked at him, her heart swelling with pride. "I'm glad you're by my side." "Always," Jack said softly, "always." And with that they stood together in silence, ready to face whatever came next. The future was uncertain and the road ahead would be long and difficult. But they knew one thing for sure, they would face it together. And that was all that mattered.